Welcome to Finding Serenity, the podcast where clarity meets calm and where everyday stress meets practical strategies to unlock your best self. I'm your host, Keely, and today's guide in the journey towards inner peace is a true authority on transforming thought into action, Robert Brennan, the mindset specialist. Welcome to episode 2, From Trauma to Authenticity. Let's begin.
Yeah. So you can't really sort of define how many sessions they'll need or what they want to do, and sometimes you can use havening to open up the channels of the mind for creativity and positivity and, mapping out the future. Because there's an interesting thing with the delta brainwave when we're in deep sleep is when the brain is encoding information from the working memory into the cortex. We can hijack that process by getting a delta brainwave in, let's say, in a conscious person, so do the havening on your arms. And if we get you to think about a positive projection of your future, well, that's been written into your cortex by the application of the delta brainwave. And that means that people can sort of leave feeling really connected to the future. Like, oh my, I know what's going to happen. I can't wait. I'm excited and I'm hopeful. And that's sort of using that delta brainwave again. So you could do as much of that type of havening as you wanted. And I get people to do something called self-havening for homework, which is very much a positive affirmational style of havening where they do a bit of rubbing of the arms to release the delta brainwave and they relax. And I get them to do some deep breathing.
So rubbing.
Yeah, rubbing downwards from the shoulder to the elbow, and you can couple that with some deep breathing. Nothing specific, just deep breathing into maybe the diaphragm. Get them to think about a very confident or a very positive state, like a wonder state, you might say it. Paul McKenna, who's one of my teachers of the past, calls it a wonder state. So you're havening, you're accessing a wonder state in the mind, and then you simply imagine the desired outcome happening. So you think if it's a presentation, you imagine yourself presenting confidently and accurately.
Yeah.
If it's you've had a fear of flying and it's your first flight, you might do a bit of self-havening the night before. Really confident wonder state. Imagine yourself just walking up the steps onto the plane, without any dramas at all. Mm-hmm. So you're practicing that future rehearsal there, but the delta brainwave makes that much more effective than simply being positive.
So you could haven anywhere. You mentioned earlier that we would talk more about abandonment trauma.
Oh, right, okay.
So how many types of trauma are there?
So there's secure attachment would be an attachment that we might form when we've had no abandonment trauma. So we've had healthy, safe upbringing, safe environment, healthy relationships, conversation with parents about troubles and difficulties, and we don't sweep anything under the carpet. That would be what we would call like a secure attachment, basically no real abandonment trauma. Then we've got something called anxious attachment, and that comes from, the hallmark of that is inconsistent caregiving. So where people, they're not really sure what they're going to get with their parent. So mum might be very grumpy one day and very happy the next day. Or maybe if a parent was an alcoholic, they might find a chaotic home life and they're not sure what sort of version of their mum or dad they're going to get.
Okay.
That can lead to what we call an anxious attachment, where someone might be very clingy, with their partner. They're a bit needy and clingy, and they're worried about their partner being unfaithful to them, even though there's might be no reason for them to worry. And then there's two more types: there's dismissive or avoidant attachment, and that happens when we've got rather than the sort of chaotic and inconsistent, it's an unavailable caregiver.
Okay.
So like emotionally unavailable. So we say, to mum or dad, like we're struggling with something at school, and they just say, yeah, you'll be okay. And we don't get a conversation. We don't get any support. We don't talk about problems. We sweep them under the carpet. Yeah, a bit like the stiff upper lip. It could even be that parents were just very busy, like lawyers or accountants or bankers or business people, and there's no emotional support. So what happens is we just stop talking about it as a child, and then we avoid it. And then when difficult things come up in our life, we just tend to ignore it and stick our head in the sand and hope it goes away.
Yeah.
And that would be what we call a dismissive or avoidant attachment. And then the last one on this list, that is the sort of the four types of attachment that we generally hear about, is this disorganized or fearful attachment, and that's from really traumatic caregiving environments. So like maybe abusive environment, so we really can't trust an attachment. It's really difficult to trust people, to have people close, and sometimes I find people with that type of attachment find it very difficult to love, or they might have what we call a trauma bond, where they've got an abusive lover effectively, but when they are love bombing or very positive, that forms a strong bond, and then it allows them the the mistreatment and the abuse is tolerated because of this completely disorganized and unhealthy attachment. So all of that could be linked into abandonment trauma of different types. Okay. And trauma of abandonment nature is usually with the caregivers of a child. We can have abandonment later in life, but it's much more important that those sort of critical formative years and in the childhood years. But I avoid this because everyone is unique. There's the 4 aspects of the self, is my design for how we become the way we are, and there's 4 components. There's the events, like what actually happened. Mm-hmm. There is your environment, like where did you grow up, what was your school like, your street like, what was your country like. Yeah. And then there's your personality profile, and there's up to 40 personality markers detectable in babies. Okay. And up to 400 will emerge through the course of one's life that are genetically encoded personality types. So we can't really, no 2 people are the same. There are personality groupings, but no 2 people are the same. And the final one is your nurture. So how were you nurtured through success or adversity? How did we deal with those difficult moments at home? Sibling rivalry, doing well or not at school or sports. So when you've got those 4 aspects of the self all together, and then you've got potential for abandonment, how that affects the person is determined by those 4 aspects. If one parent is abusive and the other one is very secure attachment there, then how does that represent in a person? We can't put that in a category. That's going to be completely unique. So I like to speak to them about the symptoms they've got. And yes, I might guide them towards some of these, and I might give them this sheet because I have it written up for them to take away if they want to read into it a little more. But there's a danger in trying to pigeonhole. And the amount of young people, especially, that have come to me and said, well, I've got an avoidant attachment style. And I say, okay, well, let's talk about your attachment style. Let's talk about your trauma and your past and what you're doing. And often it's not that helpful to know which of the 4 categories it fits in. We just need to know what to do about it. Yeah. We need to clear the trauma. We need to get them more connected to themselves. We need to get them active and eating well and sleeping well, and look at the social connections, and then they're going to feel better. Who cares what they brought to me on a plate? Like, this is my type of attachment disorder. It doesn't really matter. You just want to get them better. So that's why they do exist in psychology sort of teachings. But I think we can get bogged down in it. And I think we're much better off thinking, how do I want to feel? How do I feel right now? What can I do about it?
Of course. And then for long term, you mentioned getting better.
Yeah.
And we all say that, don't we? I just need to feel better. I just need to get better. And it's not a quick fix. It's all of these things. It's health, it's nutrition, it's exercise, it's sleep. Of course, yeah. It's looking after yourself. So what... If I said to you, Robert, I'm having a panic attack right now because of all of these things that have happened. I can't breathe. My chest is hurting. In that moment, what can I do to just move forward from that moment?
Okay. So long term, from that moment, you'll need to change things, because if you had a panic attack, there's something not right there. So I will absolutely be working with you to give you a strategy and homework that's going to support you never having another panic attack.
And we talked about meditation,
yeah,
and we talked about exercise and all of those great things that we can put on our list to do and make them habits.
Exactly.
But I guess in that moment, before I've started all of that, what do we do?
So I've got a technique that you've seen it on TV. We have a paper bag. If you've got a paper bag, I think breathing into that is supposed to calm someone down.
Good
but
stuff.
Never really known anyone have a panic attack with a paper bag on them.
No,
about their purse.
Get it out of my
out of the pocket. So my advice, I've got a breathing technique. It's on my YouTube channel. I won't go through it in too much detail now, but basically you breathe into your diaphragm, you breathe into your upper chest, try to expand it as much as possible, and you breathe into your back. So anyone that's ever done singing or acting will have been taught the back breathing. Yes. It's where your diaphragm stays still, your chest stays still, but you still fill with air. It's because your back muscles are pulling your ribs backwards to create space for air. That breathing technique is very good for increasing the function of the respiratory muscles, so we have more oxygen in the body all the time. So I recommend people do that every day in the morning to get them started for the day. That means they're less likely to have a panic attack, generally speaking. But that can be used, so it's a sort of a meditative, preventative technique. But that same breathing technique I use in the moment of a panic attack to stop the panic attack. And it's not unilaterally successful, because by the time someone's having a panic attack, you've just got to let it run its course.
Yeah.
I think an acceptance of what it is and going, okay, I'm having a panic attack, I just need to breathe through this, that can help shorten it. and a familiarity with them. Like some people have them fairly often. They just go, oh, here we go again, another panic attack. But to do that breathing, to sort of hijack your own mind again and say, no, now I'm going to just focus on my breath, that will shorten the panic attack. So it can be a firefighting technique, that breathing technique, or it can be a general sort of meditative technique to boost the sort of the oxygenation of the blood and switch on the respiratory system. But really, other than that breathing technique in that moment, there's not a lot you can do.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose thinking about it, and I've not really done this too much, but the things that we do in NLP are called anchoring, where you have a neurological state of deep calm and peace, and you can press a finger and thumb together or make a fist, and you can link that physical motion with the actual sensation of calm and peace.
Okay.
So I suppose because I've never struggled to clear panic attack disorder or to get rid of panic attacks from someone, I've never really gone into that level of detail with that, but you could give someone an anchor for calm. So when they start to feel overwhelmed and they can maybe feel the heart beating, they're kind of hallmark symbols of a panic attack, they could press the calm anchor and then close their eyes, imagine themselves on a beach, do some deep breathing. And those three things, maybe positive visualizations, breathing and pressing, that could actually really help as well.
Okay.
But maybe that's something I could work on, a little system for panic attacks for people to have, a little toolkit,
Yes.
because I do work with my individuals for that, but actually that'd be something quite accessible to all, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So you're in the moment, you're anchoring. I guess you need to put yourself in a position where you're thinking of all your favourite things. So if you've got children, where are your children? If you've got animals, where are your animals? Your parents are safe, your siblings are safe, your best friend's safe, and regulate yourself a bit like that with the breathing.
That's quite a good kind of grounding technique, I think, that you're describing then. I think, and I was watching something about kind of those grounding techniques recently that can really help bring you down. So like focusing on what you do know, like my feet are on the ground, I'm wearing blue.
Yes.
And just you focus on the truths that know that can stop you from going to this spiraling mental state. So yeah, grounding like that when I'm safe, children are safe, that could definitely work. Anything that you can kind of latch onto to distract the brain. Because actually, do you know what? It's probably worth touching on anxiety now. Because anxiety and panic attacks are like peas and carrots, basically. But anxiety is something I probably deal with most out of anything else. And if it's not brought to me in the consultation form, it's there. Because people are anxious about something. And anxiety is the most unique emotion because it's the only sort of negative emotion we can feel only about the future.
Yes.
So we can't be angry about the future because it hasn't happened yet. We can't be kind of sad about the future. We could be sad about what might happen, but that's anxiety.
Yeah.
We're not actually sad about the future because it hasn't happened yet. We can't be frustrated about the future, but we can be anxious, which basically means we're worried about the future because we're projecting something negative into that future. So anxiety, in its essence is a catastrophic worry about something that might happen. So the good thing about that is it might not. And that's the sort of the crux of all anxiety work is the tendency to expect things to be bad or difficult or just uncertain and chaotic is likely to lead to this anxiety getting worse, but we don't know. And there was a really interesting meta study done into anxiety, and I can't remember where I read it. It could have been in the Telegraph, that showed that 95% of what people had worried about through the course of their lives, they interviewed thousands of anxious people or people that had anxiety, didn't happen. So 95%. So it's not 100%, but it means if someone's feeling anxious, cognitively, yes, I know it lives in the body and we'd need to work on it in the body and in other ways. You can't just tell someone they shouldn't worry because it doesn't work. But at least cognitively, they could say, well, there's a 95% chance that what I'm worrying about isn't going to happen. And that can be quite helpful to move people a little step forward. I do believe you need to couple that with a lot of other things because many of the time people know they're being irrational.
Yes.
Especially with phobias, which is a very specific type of anxiety. They know they're not going to get bitten by a dog tomorrow, but if they see a dog, they're running. It doesn't make sense. I love dogs. I'll stroke them, and I've never been bitten by a dog. So, what's the chances that they will? But that's what they're afraid of. It's a very specific anxiety. It's not rational. So they know 95%. They probably go, I know. But it's still a good information to have, isn't it? That on average, of all the people with anxiety in the world, of which it's one of the leading causes of mental health absences from work and medication that people are on, 95% of it's not going to happen.
And we hear a lot and talk to a lot of people that talk about their anxiety. And I guess over the last 20, 30 years,
Hmm.
that has been a word that we just hear more and more and more. And why is that?
I think I wouldn't say you'd be able to sort of show objectively that people are more anxious now than they used to be, but there could well be the case that the modern world has allowed more things for us to worry about.
Okay.
You know, the hyperconnectivity to everyone, the device use, the more complex sort of structures in the world that we live in,
Mm-hmm.
the awareness of global warfare and famine and disasters and things. We just didn't have that maybe in the 50s and 60s.
Of course.
You'd read your newspaper in the morning. If you didn't read that, you're not getting hit with
No.
catastrophic information.
No.
And I've worked with many people that are worried about, the war in Ukraine. They're worried about, the global COVID response. They're worried about global macroeconomic sort of things and problems. And you just wouldn't know about them
No.
a long time ago. And what I do see is children worrying about things like
Yes.
that because they've overheard mum and dad talking.
Mm-hmm.
And that wouldn't have happened either. And the conversations in the home wouldn't have been about global problems and issues and, diseases and
Yeah.
it. So I do think the rapidly increasing volume of information that we have to deal with now, we're perhaps not really evolved for that because it's all based on technology.
Yeah.
I think there's a higher awareness. So anxious people absolutely existed 100, 200 years ago, but we probably would have just thought they were weird. We wouldn't have called it anxiety.
Yeah.
It would have just been like, it's annoying.
Yes.
And I also think that there's much more openness about when people do have it. So people might have just not talked about it.
Yeah.
So there could be more anxiety on the whole. There's definitely more awareness of it. And there's definitely more openness when people are suffering with it. But I think it's actually natural for humans to feel a little worried about the future because the human brain likes certainty, doesn't like uncertainty, and that's a survival trait. The most risk averse and maybe anxious humans of the past few 100,000 years would have been more likely to survive.
Yes.
Than the hopelessly optimistic. Mm-hmm. So evolution's kind of taken care of that, and you can actually see that with if you were to map the prefrontal lobe activity, which obviously has been done in study. I'm not just making it up. You can see that people with a more right-sided prefrontal lobe activity are more anxious and more pessimistic. People with a more left-sided are more optimistic and hopeful. Mm-hmm. But on average, humans are more right-sided. So there's a bell curve. You can see that the average human is a bit more risk-averse and anxious and pessimistic. But that is a hallmark of evolution, and the modern world is not necessarily supportive of that being a survival benefit.
Yeah. Because
people, I know there's still violence, I know there's still warfare, but people are not dying in the way that they used to die from homicide, childbirth, disease, exposure. It's just not happening, certainly not if you go back a couple of 100,000 years. So a lot of the things that we've evolved to stay safe from, like the wolf attack or the elements, we're safe from now. There's 8 billion people in the world or more. So that's why we can afford to sort of become more positive and hopeful and optimistic without it being a survival risk. And just to go on one more bit on that is that there are, in this study, it was extended to see how we alter the brain state of these people. Yeah. There's something called neuroplasticity, where the brain alters in shape and density and neuron activity based on what we do. If they were to take up yoga, meditate daily, do some sort of personal journaling every day, and basically elevate their self-care, and they would actually migrate their brainwave activity to the left-hand side. Okay. So people can become more positive, hopeful, optimistic through those things as well. So it's quite, we're not just meditating for the panic attack benefit or for the deeper sense of calm or the concentration and focus. It's literally can be a different brain, almost a different outlook on life, through that combination of things.
Okay. So we can make ourselves better and keep ourselves better.
Absolutely, yeah. Most of the time when people are struggling, they're not doing the things that they could be doing to make them feel better, which is you don't want to come down on people too hard for that, because anxiety and stress, certainly, as we've talked about, meditation, exercise, sleep, nutrition, all critical, therapy, a bit of trauma work. Some things like depression, the problem with depression is it's a very low mood. So anxiety is a worry about something that hasn't happened yet. Depression is a very low, flat mood, very low motivation. And everyone experiences depression differently, of course. Yeah. But on a whole, it's sort of very difficult to get motivated, difficult to connect, a bit dissociated and a bit detached. So if you say to someone who's got quite severe depression, you need to be in the gym, you need to be meditating, you need to be making yourself a healthy salad, they'll probably just tell you to F off.
Yes.
Because they haven't got the energy for it. So, with things like depression, yes, it's true that exercise is 1.5 times more effective than antidepressants and that's in, the research study on exercise and depression. But that's false, really, because you can't get people who are depressed to exercise that often. So they're not going to access that benefit. So what I believe is with things like depression, you might use the medication, some of the serotonin elevating medications that you can get, at the GP, and you don't want to be just taking the medication. Yes, you might feel a bit better. You use that lift to then access the gym or to get enough energy to have a healthy lunch. And then maybe, do a bit of meditation because you've got a bit more energy and a bit more motivation. So I think, with depression, it's all very well saying all these lifestyle factors, but if someone is feeling that low, they're not going to do them. That's where they might look for a medication to get them off the floor, and then they can use that energy to go to the gym, go out for a walk, do some meditation, be a bit more socially connected. So it's kind of like, whereas with trauma, if there is no depression or anything, I would absolutely be saying, well, clear the trauma. Here's your lifestyle homework. They're going to be much more likely to be able to access that. You just got to be careful what you're prescribing for which mental health condition you're facing, that you're not being totally unrealistic.
Yeah, of course. And how at the start of the podcast we talked about from trauma to authenticity. What is authenticity?
Oh, I'm glad you've asked about this one. This is probably like the holy grail of all therapy and coaching, is getting to the point of authentic self-connection. And the reason is that there's lots of points in life, and I've had points in life like this, and I'm sure you have as well, where we think, what am I actually doing? Like, what am I doing now, and what for? And then we realise that we've been doing something that doesn't fit with our actual true voice, our true authentic sort of version of life. But the problem is we don't know what that authenticity is. And that could be because of trauma, because of a personality profile where we're more likely to try and please other people, or a combination of those two things. It could be because, we're a doctor because mum and dad were doctors. We didn't want to let them down. So now we're a doctor and we hate it. And then we're not being authentic there. But the problem is finding what that authenticity is.
Yeah.
Brené Brown is one of my favourite researchers on sort of mental health, and she does a lot of research into shame and vulnerability and trauma and addiction. And she said that the authenticity could be described as being okay with what you know, what you think, what you feel, and who you are, and being unapologetic for it.
Okay.
So we're not saying, oh, sorry, but I don't really like that. We just say, oh, I don't like that. And we've got to be polite. You don't want to turn into an arsehole or an idiot.
Yeah.
But I think that finding that authentic voice and stance in life is so important. But then she describes it as braving the wilderness.
Okay.
Because it's difficult. Because as soon as you are more authentically aligned through a journey of maybe therapy, coaching, a lot of introspection, maybe a bit of values work, maybe talking about your beliefs with friends or with a coach. And, when you get to that authentic point, and everyone gets there, it's not easy to get there, you're going to upset people. Because people that you used to toe the line for and bend over backwards for, you're not going to be doing it anymore, and they won't like it. And then they've got the choice to either do their own work and their own therapy and say, why am I so controlling over, this person? Like, why am I so toxic? Or they might just go, well, I don't like them anymore. So you lose people.
Yes.
But when you're in the wilderness, it's difficult. It can be lonely sometimes. You've got to navigate the woods, and it's not easy. But when you navigate the wilderness, you're no longer afraid of it. That's the key. So it's quite daunting at first, and it's difficult and it's complicated. But when you've actually become familiar with it, you get used to it. And that loneliness that you might feel sometimes is absolutely worth the price of being authentic and sticking to what you truly believe in life. Because if you are deviating to keep X person happy or Y person happy, you're just changing the number of people that like you from this category to this category. But just as many people then now dislike you because you're not authentic anymore, or because you've done something that they don't like. So the only true path through life is to find that authenticity. And I think it's preservative of mental health problems. I know it's difficult sometimes, but you always know that you've done the right thing, and you know that you've done the right thing by you, your values, your beliefs. You're more likely to align yourself with a job which shares similar values, with a partner that has similar values and beliefs. And therefore it's going to be much better than, almost pretending to be something that you maybe not, or trying to fit in, because you're not being authentic in that regard. So I hope that's described it, because it does get bandied around a lot, authenticity, doesn't it? Like being my authentic self, and what does it actually mean?
Yes.
You've got to do some work to get there. I don't think anyone has spontaneously just found themselves. I think it just takes a bit of work.
Yeah.
Like, what do I really think? What do I really believe? My journey from investment banking, I like economics, I like investment banking, I like finance, but it just didn't feel right. And now I know that I found what I want to do, because I'm with people maybe 10 hours a day sometimes, without really much of a break. But I'm engaged and I'm interested and I'm passionate about it. Whereas, as much as I like finance, I can't remember having a 10-hour day happily on an Excel spreadsheet, feeling like I was really in a worthwhile position. So that's more authentic for me, I think, to be understanding and helping and listening to people. It gives me a lot of personal value. Whereas, you could probably pursue a different career for other reasons, like finance. It might not be as fulfilling, and it's inauthentic.
Yes. And I think probably one of the words that links very closely to our authentic self is boundaries. And for somebody that is wanting to keep the peace, but wanting to be authentic, how tricky is it for people to set boundaries with others and stick to them?
It's tricky. The problem we've got with boundaries is that often we're in a certain situation and we might seek therapy or coaching or support, and that's where it's highlighted that we don't really have boundaries.
Yes.
And therefore, we've got a lot of relationships in our life that are used to that version of us.
Yes.
So if we go and do a bit of work out what our boundaries are, and we slam them down all around us, that's probably going to be a bit too much for the people around us that are, expected to instantly, overnight, completely change their relationship with us, maybe.
Yeah.
So I always describe boundary setting with the existing people around you as lovingly weaving the boundaries.
Okay.
So you start to gently push back.
Yeah.
And you kind of authentically and gently express yourself. And how they then respond to that tells you all you need to know about that relationship. So if you start to have a little bit more of a boundary with a friend, and they start to say, well, no, if you don't come out for my birthday, I'm not inviting you again.
Yeah.
And they start to be coercive with you, then you kind of realise that you never realised that before, because you always went to their birthday. You always did, even if you didn't want to, or you were busy or had something that you found more important. And that's actually a toxic, quite controlling relationship. Of course, you don't want to let your friends down. But if you are making decisions based on whether they're going to be pleased with you or not, it's generally quite toxic.
Yeah.
So we have a boundary there. We might start to gently say, look, I'm really busy. I'd love to come. And, I'll definitely be there next time, but I can't make it. And if they go, that's all right. I love you. You're a great friend. You do what you need to do. That's a healthy relationship, a healthy attachment. And that's what we want. But I can promise you, you won't have that with every friend that you have in your life. None of us will. But you don't find out that until you start to be a little more firm with your personal boundaries. And I think it's worth clarifying what a boundary is, because that can be confusing as well. A boundary is basically a rule or a little decision that you make that affects your life that nobody else needs to do anything at all to conform with. So it's not a question. It's not saying, well, look, my boundary is please don't do that. That's not a boundary. That's a question.
Yeah.
The boundary would be, okay, I don't like it if you do that. If you do it again, then there's a consequence.
Of course.
So it might be like, we're not friends anymore. Or it might be, or maybe something else. Like with children, parents say, boundaries are, using the iPad. Put your iPad away. Come on, remember, no iPads. And they're still on the iPad.
Yeah.
That's not really a boundary. The boundary would be set by saying, when you get home from school, if you're on your iPad before 6 o'clock, then we take the iPad for a full day.
Yes.
And they go in from school and they go on their iPad and you go, okay, no fighting, no drama. You take it from them physically. You don't ask them to bring it to you, because they won't. And they'll run upstairs with it. And then you've got a fight on your hands.
Yeah.
You take it and you put it away and you stick to that for 24 hours. And then they go, okay, so mum or dad are serious about this one. And that's when you could start to get a behavioural change.
Yes.
Because the most frustrating thing for parents banging their head against the wall, saying, get off your iPad, you shouldn't be on your iPad. Well, you need to take action and put a boundary in place. And you can't do that with other adults particularly, but with your children you can. Mm-hmm. And it's that firm, calm, consistent boundary with your children that teaches them about boundaries and what is and isn't okay and how to regulate them, and gives them the ability to have boundaries, with their friends. And that's so important for children growing up, boundaries with with other people, like what is okay with physical banter and things. And if you don't like being punched in the arm, a lot of kids are just kind of going, oh yeah, dead arm again. But it's like, no, if you punch me again, there's going to be a consequence.
Yes.
And I would suggest go to the teachers or the parents, not punch them back. But you start to have boundaries with yourself as well. And if we've got good boundaries as parents with our kids, then they're going to have better boundaries. But it's very hard to suddenly get your boundaries. But of course, most of my clients have come to me for a reason.
Yes.
So we are talking about boundaries and looking at their relationships, and then they are lovingly weaving them, but they will lose people. Not everyone will stick around in someone's life when they start to become more authentic and boundary led, but the right people will. And then the new people that come into their life get the opportunity to judge them based on the boundary led, authentic version of them, which means that they tend to make better friends in the future, or they don't make friends as often, if you see what I mean, or both.
Yes.
So if they make a new friend, they'll be the right friend. But if there's someone that they're not that bothered about, they're not going to be kowtowing to them, so they don't make that relationship at all. So we don't have shit friends anymore, or bad friends, because we just don't get that close to them.
Yeah.
So that's why we need to weave them lovingly with the people around us in our life, and they will migrate away from us or towards us based on how they find that. They might do their own work to help them, they might not. And then with new people, having that firm boundary guarantees us better relationships with new people, or no relationship if they're not the right person. So it's worth doing. It's difficult, but it's absolutely worth it.
And if we're our authentic self, we've done our work, and some of our friends and relationships haven't survived the boundaries.
Yeah.
We've got that situation where we're in that alone space.
Yeah.
But moving forward, the new relationships will be real and true relationships.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that loneliness in the wilderness, as Brené Brown says, is worth it to get to the sort of the stronger mental health position that we can only access through that authentic route.
Mm-hmm.
We can't really get there because it's always going to be fragile.
Yeah.
You know, when you see people, they've got a lot of acquaintances that, you know, they look to have on paper a really wonderful kind of vibrant life, but they're not often not that happy.
Yes.
They probably need to sort of look at those relationships, work on themselves, and find their actual tribe,
Mm-hmm.
the people that are right for them. And that could be a difficult journey because they say, I don't want to be left out. I don't want to be not invited on the night out. But you say, you've not been enjoying the nights out. You don't like the way they talk about other people. You don't like the topics of conversation. You know, but it's fearful, isn't it, when you start to not connect with your sort of group you've grown up with or that you've hung out with for a long time. But so many people I'm working with say, I just don't think my friends are right for me.
Yes.
I don't like it. I've realised I don't feel comfortable with them. So, you know, start to live a more authentic, boundaries-led life, and they'll migrate away, and then you might end up with different people around you. It's difficult. Sometimes that's your family.
Yes.
Sometimes it's like your brother that you used to hang out with, and you realise you don't get on, and you don't think the same about certain things in life, and that's really difficult. And you may still have a relationship, but you realise then you're not that similar.
Yes.
And it's okay. Or you can keep going along and doing what you don't really like and behaving in a way that you don't really approve of, and then you're just chipping away at your sense of self the whole time.
Yes.
You might end up with anxiety. You might end up feeling unhappy with yourself. So that's it.
That was a big chat. So
it was.
so much to reflect upon. So I think for anyone that's listening to this, the first step to supporting with trauma, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and getting to our authentic self, because it is a journey, and it's a full circle journey really, because we're never at the destination where we think we should be.
Yeah.
And we have to learn to be at peace with where we are now. What would be the first step? If I came to you and said, Robert, I'm traumatized, or something bad's happened and I'm having panic attacks, what would be the first step?
It's a really good question, because there's a lot of people that have had a lot of therapy and are still at that point.
Yep.
Or there's a lot of people that have not had any therapy and they just know that something's been a bit off, or they've had troubles with addiction or with, you know, serial bad relationships. And I think it's to make the decision that enough's enough.
Yeah.
So one way or another, okay, it's come to the point that I want to talk to someone. It's like, that's it then. It's enough's enough. The old way isn't working. So we need to have some new behaviours. And then I would have to say, it sounds like, marketing myself, but you need to speak to someone, a professional. So not necessarily me, but you need to talk to someone that knows about trauma, that knows about anxiety, that knows about depression, and they will speak to you and they'll find out your story. So I will, before someone's paid me any money, I will kind of have a chat with them for 20 minutes or so just to understand them and what's going on with them. And I will know whether I can help them or not, and how I'll help them. I'll explain how I want to. So they're not, throwing money at something they don't think is going to work. But I think you need to find the right person. You need to get on in that 20-minute call and you need to kind of trust them. And sometimes people trust me because I've worked with their best friend or their mum or their dad or their son. And a lot of my work is referral based. So that bypasses that kind of the trust building in a way, because they know they're going to work with you. But, you just need to explain how you're going to work with them, and they need to be reassured by that enough to actually, commit to working with you. But I think there's a few books you can read, but The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk's a great book. When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate. So many other books really that I won't. So The Chimp Paradox is a great book by Dr. Stephen Peters. Mindset by Carol Dweck. They're not going to do any harm to read these books, but I've never really met anyone that I've worked with that had just read a book and been healed.
Yes.
I think you do need to be guided by someone that's experienced and they know what they can do with you. So making that decision, having that phone call with me or someone else like me, feeling reassured that they can support you and help you and they're the right person for you, and then taking that journey, it's so worth it. Of all the thousands of people I've worked with, in Cheshire or in my Harley Street clinic in London, I've never had anyone regret working. No one's ever said, do you know what a waste of time. Because the worst case scenario is they understand themselves better, they're calmer, they're probably meditating and they're keeping a gratitude journal. The best case is, of course, they're fully cured, everything's fine. But the very worst thing that's going to happen is they feel better. So it's so worth making that journey and never giving up as well, because some people go to a hypnotist and have a bad experience. Well, it's like plumbing. Someone's going to come and do plumbing, they flood your house. Doesn't mean plumbers are bad, does it? It means that that's a bad plumber.
Yeah.
So with therapy, just because you've tried different types of therapy doesn't mean that you're not going to get the healing that you need. You just need to find the right person for you. And one thing about me is if I can't help, I will find someone who can help, because my network is very extensive. And I will make sure that I get that person help if I have to find someone myself for them, because there's someone for everyone definitely out there. And there is the help is there. You just got to ask for that help.
Yeah.
You're not going to solve it yourself. I just don't think anyone does.
So the first step is to ask for help, and I guess a therapist will determine, after that initial phone call, what is going to work for the client.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to say it's okay to have 10, 20, 30 sessions, go away, be their authentic self, but then also come back for 5 sessions here and there. That's okay. We don't have to say we're fixed up and that's it forever. Is that relationship an ongoing relationship?
So different types of therapy operate a little bit differently. So a counsellor would be absolutely someone you just go and sit and talk to every week for the rest of your life if you want to.
Okay.
But a counsellor will be quite passive. So they'll be listening, holding space, maybe asking a couple of questions for you to talk, but they won't be giving you advice or direction, or they shouldn't really be doing those sorts of things. And then you've got kind of psychotherapy and psychology. They're going to be a lot more analytical. They're going to talk about, case studies of psychological models and research and theories, and it's going to bring a lot of self-understanding. They may be more directive as well with what they need to do and how they help. And then you've got a coach. A coach is, again, working more with like an action planning, understanding them, setting goals, moving towards them. So with me, I kind of do it all. So I'll speak, I'll understand, and then I'll do the therapy, the hypnotherapy, the NLP, the trauma work. And then we'll move into the coaching. So we'll look at goals, beliefs, values. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to take your life? And if they then have another trauma, we can go back and do some more havening. So in an ideal world, I would always have a long relationship with everyone that I've worked with. But sometimes it is just a phobia. And if you can kill the phobia, well, they're fine. They might be really high-flying sort of business person, but they've got a flight phobia. Once you clear the flight phobia, they're on a plane.
Yeah.
They're not going to necessarily come back and see you. But if they did, we could still help them. Right. And, it always helps to talk. There's been so many cases. There's a great example where someone's wife was having sessions with me, but she felt so much better. She still had a couple of hours left. She's like, I don't think I need them. I feel great. So she sent her husband. And he was like, well, I've got no issues. I've got nothing wrong. But 2 hours later, he was like, wow, I feel so much better just for talking about it and understanding it. And
Yeah.
I never knew where that came from. And so I think there's always a benefit in talking. But it isn't necessarily a long-term relationship. It depends on the person.
Okay.
But because Havening's got that trauma clearance and also sort of the future building, positive hope, optimism building sort of technique as well, you can always do that. My longest running client is about 15 years.
Wow.
Comes in every week. She's about 75 now, I think, but she comes in for an hour of talking and then hypnosis and sort of havening, just to sort of clear her mind, make her feel good, ready every week for probably about 14 years. I've known her for a little bit longer than that, but yeah. Wow. So there you go. And I do have a lot of long-term client relationships as well. So
good. Well, that was really, really interesting. And I'm super grateful to you for spending some time with us today.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. It's good to talk.
Thank you.